What's going on, Colts Nation? Happy Sunday. I hope you're having a great weekend at this point, and I appreciate you stopping by today. We're going to talk about and kind of go off the heels of what we talked about yesterday. We're going to continue this wide receiver conversation and kind of reacting to the ESPN article that predicted Michael Pittman Jr. wouldn't be back at the Colts. And there are a lot of people in the comments of that video saying, oh, stop it. He's for sure going to be a Colt. Like, nothing's for sure. Like, we cut Peyton Manning. Okay, anything is possible. Andrew Luck retired after his 8th season in the NFL. Dude, anything is possible, especially when you're talking about the Colts. Okay, and don't forget, it is the offseason. Okay, we're just talking here. Okay, these are conversations. Michael Pittman Jr. very well might not be a Colt. And in the instance that he isn't, I think there's some contingency plans that we as a fan base should be looking at. What are we going to do if that doesn't happen? So that's what we're going to talk about here today. And we kind of already talked about some of this. Like, yes, when you're looking at it, you're looking at the free agent wide receivers and you're looking at who did the best this year. On top of that list, it's Mike Evans with 79 catches, but he had 1,255 yards and 13 touchdowns. Mike Evans just continues to ball out. He plays through injuries, right? He has his own injury situations that pop up, but even at 30 years old, he played all 17 games. Mike Evans is an absolute dog. And with his age, his contract isn't going to be $25 million. So if it's possible to get him at an affordable price and you're not wanting to pay Michael Pittman Jr., then yeah, go ahead and get Mike Evans. Maybe it's only a 2-year deal, right? But even still, if you're able to get Mike Evans with the production that he has year in, year out, as good as he is at getting open in different situations, specifically in the red zone and in the end zone, then I think taking a chance on Mike Evans would be a good idea. Now, what does it look like if you have Mike Evans, Alec Pearson, Josh Downs? That's a really good question. I don't know if it's going to be any better than Michael Pittman Jr. in the other two, right? But I do know that Mike Evans coming in, it wouldn't be a downgrade, right? At least not much of a downgrade. I think Mike Evans, he's not perfect. People are going to talk about the drops, and he does have those from time to time. But Mike Evans, in my opinion, is a guy that is dependable, a guy that you know what you're going to get with him, a veteran player. So he'd be a good option. Calvin Ridley ended up with Michael Pittman Jr. was second in the league in yards. He had 109 catches with 1,152 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did fumble the ball twice, but then Calvin Ridley was third in yards, and there were only 3 free agent wide receivers this year that went over 1,000 yards. Calvin Ridley's the other one. He had 76 catches, 1,016 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And Calvin Ridley's a bit of a wild card. You know, he's at the age, he's 29 years old. He'll turn 30 during the next season. So is that a guy that you're going to give big money to? And with everything that's going on with him, what's his price going to be? That's the big question. What's Calvin Ridley's price going to be? What's he going to be as he nears 30 and starts going over 30? He obviously took some time away from football, you know, between taking his own time away and then being suspended. So he could have a little extra longevity after he turns 30 years old, but the fact still remains he'll be 30 next season. What's his price going to be? Is he going to be worth it? I'm not sure if that's a guy that if I'm the Colts, I would bring in, although I'm sure that's somebody that's at least going to be on the list, somebody that they're at least going to do their homework on, see what happens, might go back to Jacksonville, might go to a place like Kansas City, or might go to a place like Buffalo. Could you imagine a place like Buffalo? They're not going to have Gabe Davis, presumably, so they could have Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley. That's a move that a team like the Bills might make, right? So I don't know if Calvin Ridley is going to end up on the Colts, but then Gabe Davis is the first receiver under Calvin Ridley, had 746 yards, 7 touchdowns this season on 45 catches. Okay, so there's a clear separation between the top 3 and the rest of these guys, at least in terms of stats, right? You have a guy like T. Higgins that's on this list. He's 25 years old right now. And in the 12 games that he played this year, he had 42 catches and 656 yards. And of course, with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, all these guys, their stats were affected by the fact that Joe Burrow began the season injured. Jake Browning, even though he came in and balled out for a couple games, toward the end of the season, kind of faded out. right? And he missed some games. So T. Higgins, kind of an off year for him compared to what we saw from him in his first few years. But this to me is the guy, like, if you're not going to pay Michael Pittman Jr. and you're not going to get him, then maybe it's a thing where, yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. is not going to be the answer, because if they're giving big money out like that, they're going to go to T. Higgins and say, hey, we were going to give, $25 million Michael Pittman Jr. Let's go ahead, give you $28 million a year. You'll be our number one receiver. We're going to draft a guy, and then you guys can go ball out. We got Josh Downs last year. We got Anthony Richardson. We got Jonathan Taylor. And let's go crazy on offense with T. Higgins, a new first-round wide receiver, and Josh Downs. Like, the passing game in that instance would be crazy, in my opinion, right? And to go through the rest of this list, right? There's Gabe Davis. Is he a guy that you really want on the team? I don't know if he's consistent enough, right? Seems like Alec Pierce, in my opinion, right? More of a go route kind of guy. Does he have more ability than Alec Pierce? Yeah, in my opinion. I think he would be better than Alec Pierce, but is he worth what he's going to want? Probably not, right? He's probably going to want like Allen Lazard money, and I just don't know if the Colts should be allocating that kind of money to him. All right, Tyler Boyd, getting too old, not the right Bengals receiver, in my opinion. Curtis Samuel's interesting, and all the different things he could do and what he would be able to do in Shane Steichen's offense. I think that's an interesting name to keep on the board. He was making $11.5 million in Washington. It'll be interesting to see what kind of money he's going to warrant and what kind of deal he wants, because I think Curtis Samuel would be a good addition to the team as wide receiver depth. I don't think he's obviously not going to be the number one receiver and step into that role if we don't get Michael Pittman Jr. So in my opinion, go and get Curtis Samuel, and I think that'd be an interesting name to add as a depth piece. Okay, Marquise Brown, no telling what kind of money he's going to warrant. And honestly, there's way too much inconsistency. The hands aren't good enough for me to want Marquise Brown. I don't care if he's fast or not. I don't want him. Noah Brown, though, is a guy that would be interesting. Bring in Noah Brown or bring in a guy like KJ Osborne. These are a couple of names that I'm going to be watching for. What kind of money do they want? What kind of role can they fit into in Shane Steichen's offense? These are things that we'll continue to look into, because I think Noah Brown is a talented receiver, and I think KJ Osborne has been wildly underrated, just buried on a depth chart on a team that generally has really good receivers. Okay, and as I continue to look down on this list, Darnell Mooney is a name that is very interesting. Another guy that I wouldn't mind seeing coming to the Colts. But again, this is all a conversation. If we don't sign Michael Pittman Jr., does it make sense to do this? And a lot of these guys that we're naming, Noah Brown, KJ Osborne, Darnell Mooney, like, these are guys that aren't going to be number one receivers. So in that instance, what do you do without Michael Pittman Jr.? Well, that's where we turn to the draft. And as I continue to look through this, and as I continue, I did my mock draft. And in my mock draft, I had Caleb Williams being the top pick going to Chicago. If that doesn't happen and Marvin Harrison Jr. goes there, then maybe Caleb Williams goes number 2. I think there's a really good possibility, like 99% sure, Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. are going to go 1-2 in the draft. That just feels possible to me. So as I continue to look through it, and I'll show you guys my mock draft right here so that you can kind of see what I'm looking at. I have, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., a quarterback of some sort, and I think it'll be Jaden Daniels going to New England. And as you continue to work through, Malik Neighbors as a wide receiver gets picked up with the Giants. I don't think it'll be worth trading up to that position to go get a wide receiver. So as you continue to go, the Titans aren't going to trade with us. The Falcons need a quarterback. They'll get Drake May. And then you get to number 9, where Chicago could very easily just stay put. Or if they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. number 1, I think if they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. number 1, it's more likely that they'll be willing to trade that number 9. But if they go Caleb Williams with number 1, there's a really good chance the Bears stay put at number 9. But even if they don't, and even if they are fine with sliding back a little bit, then I think number 9 is where we could trade up to go get Rome Odunze. One way or another, Rome Odunze ends up being drafted number 9 and coming in. That's a guy that, yes, he's going to be a little raw, like people like to say. There's going to be a learning curve for rookies, especially rookie wide receivers, especially when a rookie wide receiver is going up against a DB that's been in the league for a little while. These DBs learn things, right? Just like anybody else, they develop, they learn, they grow. So Rome Odunze, it's not going to be perfect. At least I wouldn't expect him to come in and light the world on fire in his rookie season. But I think he could be like Rashee Rice for the Chiefs, where beginning of the season, there's again that learning curve and getting up to speed with everything, learning the playbook, learning how to work in the NFL. But ultimately, I think by the end of the season, Rome Odunze could separate himself and be that number one guy if Michael Pittman Jr. isn't on the team, right? And then so you think about it, we end up in a situation where we have Rome Odunze, and if your number two is Alec Pierce, and then you have Josh Downs, or you have KJ Osborne mixed into that, or you have Darnell Mooney mixed into that, right? Then you're starting to talk about wide receiver depth, and at that point, right, if you're not going to pay big money to one guy, then maybe they go out and get KJ Osborne as a depth piece, and they get Curtis Samuel as a rotational piece in a big part of the offense. And maybe that's an avenue they go while they draft Rome Odunze. And then all of a sudden, you have all kinds of wide receiver depth. You have different guys who can do different things in this Shane Steichen offense. So there's an avenue they could go. Now, also, there's the avenue where you go and pay big money to T. Higgins instead of Michael Pittman Jr., and you draft Rome Odunze, trade up, draft Rome Odunze. And I think that's possible. Right now, also, I'll flash up my mock draft here once again. You see the way I had it set up, we end up with Keon Coleman. So maybe we just stay put in the draft. We get T. Higgins instead of Michael Pittman Jr., and then we get Keon Coleman. And see, what I want to bring this up for is, what do you think we should do of all the different possibilities that we talked about here, that I mentioned here? What do you think is what we should do? Who do you think we should pick up in free agency if we don't get Michael Pittman Jr.? Who do you think we should draft if we don't pay Michael Pittman Jr.? Because again, this is the NFL. This is the Colts. Nothing is guaranteed. Just because you want Michael Pittman Jr. to be on the team next year doesn't mean I want Michael Pittman Jr. to be on the team. I need everybody to understand that. I want Michael Pittman Jr. to be a Colt, but it's not guaranteed. Michael Pittman Jr. is not guaranteed to stay in Indy. Maybe he wants to go play somewhere else. Maybe somebody else is going to give him more money. It's very possible that happens. Nothing is guaranteed. So open your mind up. Let's have a conversation. Don't just shut it down immediately. Right? That's what these conversations are for. It's the off season. Let's talk about this. Okay. You give me your opinion down in the comments section. Okay. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you have those notifications on so you get notified when we have more videos coming out. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.